Hi, everybody. I'm Lisa Cartwright, and we're beginning with our hour-long film screening. And going to introduce the filmmakers. They'll each say just a few words about their film, and we're going to show the three films in succession. These are three films that were made in conjunction with the Getty Pacific Standard Time Embodied Pacific program that Nan Renner and I organized over the past 4 years here at UCSD. And we'll say more about that at 5 o'clock when the formal panels begin. So we'll begin with Simon, if you could just say a few words about Orthogonal.
Sure. Thanks so
much. And then
much.
Rachel, and then Louis.
Okay. Thanks, Lisa. Hi, everyone. The video you're going to see is actually kind of just a put together cut up of a set of interviews that illustrate the Orthogonal project. I don't regard it as a film in that sense. But the Orthogonal project is a project to build a novel kind of sailing craft premised on traditional Micronesian voyaging canoe dynamics and designs that is focused towards sustainability and creating viable decarbonized sail transport for island communities. That's the kind of motivation of the project. And the project combines aspects of traditional sailboat design with contemporary materials, traditional Western boat building materials, modern aerodynamic and hydrodynamic research, and a whole combination of factors. The film is in 3 sections. The first discusses the work as design for the real world, a term taken from Victor Papanek's design research, and research-driven practice. So I won't say any more. Thank you so much for your attention.
It's so great to be here. Thank you so much, Lisa, for inviting me to work on the flip, which has really taken up a lot of my time for the last 3 years. First, I was thinking, why did she choose me, and why the flip? I've been making films about primates, and it took me a while to get into the actual the vessel. I mean, it is a rarity in the world, a research vessel that has been built to capsize, or at least to tilt 90 degrees in the water to become a live-in buoy to do ocean research. And the interior is a fun house, kind of Escher might have designed, where everything is very topsy-turvy. So it's an interesting architectural space. But it doesn't have a clear narrative like, maybe a retired oil platform would have, where you maybe think it would be simpler I think it would be simpler to approach such a project, where the flip, I think it aside from its oddity, is it encompasses just the history of oceanography from the Cold War to the present. And so in taking on the project, I wound up it was a great excuse to learn about the physical and biological ocean sciences through interviews with many wonderful researchers. And, the other motivation for doing a project about the flip for 3 years was that I was hoping we would go on the flip, but it was decommissioned within about a year of the assignment to work on the flip. So the challenge of shooting a story about it was how do you make the flip while it's at dock? It's docked and won't move, and so you'll see what we did with that. And so it encompasses all sorts of stories. But I think the central narrative I found, if this makes any sense, is the big flip in oceanography from Cold War military, which had a gigantic influence on the trajectory of ocean science, as physics, was also deformed or completely formed by the military. If you think about the Manhattan Project, probably ocean research has been shaped as much by the military over time as physics has. So thinking about the flip from a territorialized, aggressive, very well-funded kind of context to the kinds of work that have been going on since the 90s, where there's been a more sensitivity to whales, to ocean life, to monitoring the health of the ocean, to just understanding internal waves and deep sea circulation of currents and those sorts of things. To gloss over 60 years of ocean science. Hope you like the film.
Hello. I've been working on a project centered around the disappearance of platform holly off the Goleta coast, Santa Barbara coast, for about 5 or 6 years. And it's the first of 27 oil platforms that will be retired within the next decade. And I imagine that this documentary project would be a component of the Embodied Pacific. However, the narrative involving Exxon, State Lands Commission, and the like, is moving more slowly than I had anticipated, or they had anticipated, coupled with COVID and the like. So I thought, I don't have a narrative. I'm sort of halfway through this narrative. What am I going to do? And I started thinking about it, and I thought, well, you know, what happens if they take platform holly? What are they going to do? What's next? Where are we going with this notion of extraction? So I went the opposite direction and made a Cli-Fi film that used some of the footage that I had garnered from documenting platform holly to make a something fantastical, but not fantastical at all. So I'll leave you for the film. Thank you.
You and I both practice in this genre of research-driven practice where the creative work is about something, you know, and there's a problem to solve. And the problem that I wanted to solve was, how can I help these communities by learning from their technologies and modeling something which merges certain kinds of real advantages of Western technologies that don't undercut problems of sustainability, that maybe provide these communities with some viable solution for a post-petroleum future. Because let's not forget, you know, Fiji alone has 128 islands. Many of those islands never see a doctor because big Western ships can't.
Because there's no dock for them.
Because there's no dock, exactly.
What made this particular project so urgent for you?
What I've noticed about the projects I do is that they're always very big and very ambitious, and I choose to do them because they satisfy multiple needs. In this case, I'm a sailor, I'm a sometime boat builder. I'm very interested in the specificities of these Pacific traditions. I'm politically engaged because I see them being eradicated by Western colonial forces, and there's an ecological crisis which is affecting these communities. It is a wicked problem, and artists are good at solving wicked problems. This is a heterogeneous, multidimensional problem that has social dimensions, political dimensions, historical dimensions, technological dimensions, crafting dimensions, logistics dimensions, you know, and it's like trying to find the sweet spot in there, you know, like how can I leverage what in the West we understand about hydrodynamics and aerodynamics and what we've been able to do with composite materials to make something that can still be repaired on an island with no electricity.
It's not a nostalgic project. You're not trying to
No.
recreate every aspect of a tradition.
Oh, absolutely
You're trying
not.
to capture the advantages that the method provided this culture. I mean, that's another attractive quality of the project, that you're not trying to recreate something. You're trying to evolve from a different position in historical trajectory, in a different technological tradition, but you're not afraid for it to change, because it does feel like other people working this way might be like, well, I don't want to try to create anything new. It's like, well, why not? I mean, that's the artist in you, but also requires a level of imagination and lateral thinking that
Yeah.
the commercial enterprise doesn't have.
Totally.
They're not looking at the history. They're not working with the people. So there's this kind of interesting collision where artists who are accustomed to working with people, who do long-term projects,
Yes.
but this particular version of art practice is about combining that with, like, as you say, a desire to actually engage with this complex set of issues.
And there's lots of people who are trying to resuscitate and keep alive these incredibly complex technologies of indigenous cultures.
But one of the most beautiful things about the project, to me, is this educated guess. Like, you're aware that you're a very intelligent person with a lot of specific knowledge in both sailing and sailcraft and Micronesian sailcraft. But at the end of the day, until you've built a full-scale boat, and akin to the first time somebody built a full-scale boat anywhere at any point in history, you don't quite know if it'll work.
Yes, orthogonal is designed for the real world. Yeah, a book I had when I was a teenager or an art student, and that lesson has stayed with me. Papanek was a designer who was looking at the kinds of problems that are experienced in isolated communities without a big technological resource to draw upon, and had his design students not dream up super high-tech things, but how can you make a water pump out of an old car tire and 2 bits of plywood and a couple of bits of inner tube rubber, right? And it's like, that's smart situated thinking. Yeah, I think I took that lesson a long time ago. I've seen, and many of us have seen, in underdeveloped nations, isolated places where well-meaning philanthropic people or foundations or so on have dropped high-tech solutions into a place and they simply die and rot in short order. This boat has to be repairable on a beach with no power. If you can't do that, the project's a failure, right? Where, once again, there's an outfit called Okeanos who are building composite fiberglass, quasi-Hokulea catamarans with diesel engines that ostensibly will run on coconut oil, or solar electric engines with Kevlar rigging and Dacron sails. And when you're 800 miles from the nearest airstrip over water, and that thing is broken because someone put dirty coconut oil in the engine and now the engine won't start, you got nothing. But, you can't go cutting down 3-foot mahogany trees from the islands that have the big trees and then spending 2 or 3 years where everyone in the village is chipping away these logs of wood in order to build a traditional sailcraft, which inevitably are subject to the pressures of rot and parasites, and often, as I've seen myself, last a few years and then decompose. Right? So on the one hand, there are the people who I deeply, deeply respect, who are trying to keep the traditional skills and knowledge alive, and that's terribly, terribly important. On the other hand, there are people who are attempting to drop high-tech solutions, not unlike carbon capture or something, onto these communities that don't have the capability to use them. Hopefully, orthogonal sits somewhere in the middle. It's got some exotic materials. It's got fiberglass. It's got epoxy. the thing about those materials is, even though they're exotic and the product of a high-tech petrochemical industry, you can work them with your hands.
They're garage materials.
If you've got a pair of scissors, and an empty tin can, you can and a handsaw, you can probably effect a repair. Humans, with their own technology constructed of available materials, settled a third of the planet, which is mostly water, using technologies of their own devising, navigational systems of their own devising, that are utterly unlike Western systems. There are no maps, there's no notation, there are no instruments. The boats themselves are made without fasteners, they're tied together with rope. There's no nails, no screws, bolts. And they are uniquely adapted, in general, to the maritime ecology of those islands, which are shallow atoll islands with reefs, lagoons, estuaries. And this is historically important because when Westerners came to the Pacific, the strategic sites were the deep water harbours, because Western boats, as you know, because they're monohulls, have to have a huge weight on the bottom in order to counteract the effect of the wind on the sails, otherwise they'd fall over. Hence they have to be big and deep. Hence they need deep water harbours that are protected from storms. Hence Subic Bay, Guam, Suva Harbour and Pearl Harbour are some of the most strategic locations for the West in the whole of the Pacific. But for the Pacific Islanders, their craft was shallow because instead of having a keel, they have a counteracting lever arm, which we call an outrigger. Some different vernaculars, they have different names. But that's really structurally interesting because rather than having a pendulum with a counterweight vertically below, you rotate the lever arm 90 degrees, which makes it more efficient. The brilliance of these craft is they're adapted to those shallow atoll islands. They're perfectly seaworthy in the deep ocean, but they can approach shallow atoll islands that don't have a deep harbour.
These are two types of sailcraft that literally started in different oceans.
I mean, they met from the arrival of the Portuguese in Guam, right? In 15 whatever it was, when these big bathtubs of rat-infested Portuguese ships with most of the crew dying of scurvy were met with 500 proas that were sailing faster than anything they'd ever seen before by a factor of 4 or 5. I mean, the Portuguese boat would sail at 5 knots. These things were doing 20 knots. And the same thing happened all across the Pacific. The multi-hull revolution began in Hawaii in the 60s. Mm. What's interesting about that is although the catamarans were modelled on traditional Polynesian symmetrically twin-hulled boats, that tradition had been lost in Hawaii for the previous 300 years. You know, the modern catamaran is a revival of a traditional Polynesian sail form, but no one took up the asymmetrical proas because the catamarans tack. Yeah. So that was familiar. Yeah, they have a bow and a stern. They're less weird.
And they tack poorly.
The proas didn't really exist in Polynesia, right? The Polynesian boats tended to be catamarans. The boats from Guam and the Marianas through Micronesia across all around New Guinea into the Solomons, into Tonga, Samoa, the Marshall Islands, Fiji Islands, are different variations on this kind of asymmetry, and at some point in the middle they merge. And that's very interesting, because even in the early 19th century, Tonga, Samoa, and Fiji had navies with troop-carrying ships that were somehow a hybrid between the Polynesian catamarans and the shunting rig of the Western Pacific, They could carry 150 warriors and sail at 20 knots. They were freaking scary. But they had more or less symmetrical hulls, but with a shunting rig. That's the interesting sort of design complexity of these asymmetrical outrigger craft, right? If you swing the keel to horizontal in order not to have the deep draft, because the ecology says you can't,
Right. It's
Right.
just been rotated now.
yeah, it's just swung 90 degrees again, right? Then you have a problem because that outrigger in a traditional craft always has to stay on the windward side. So you can't tack, because then the outrigger will be on the leeward side and you'll sink. So therefore you have to shunt, which means you don't turn, you don't tack either side of the eye of the wind. You proceed in one direction, you stop and you reverse and you go in the other direction. And there are railway systems that do this, right? So when you're going up a steep hill and the track can't follow the curve around, you go this way, you stop and you reverse, and you go that way, and you stop and you go. That's shunting, right? It's like the same, exactly the same concept as these boats. But what happens is that you then have to solve the problem of how do you reverse the sail rig. Even though the hull is symmetrical, you've got to take the sail rig from one end of the boat to the other, or somehow reverse it.
How would in a traditional Polynesian proa, how does shunting work?
Okay, so the shunting rig tends to have a short mast in the centre of the boat, and the sail is on two spars, what we would call a boom and what we might call a yard, that terminate at a point, and that point terminates at the bow. So the mast holds up the yard halfway up the yard like that, right? And in order to shunt it, you've got to pick that point with the two spars up and drag it around to the other end of the boat. And that's difficult on a boat that carries 3 or 4 people. I can't imagine how you could possibly do it on a boat that carried 100 people, that was 100 feet long. I mean, it's like the masses are just huge. Of course, you've got lots of sailors. And of course, until the last 200 years, all sailing has been about wind and human muscle power.
Why is it called a throw?
Well, it's orthogonal because the nature of the design of the boat is orthogonal to traditional Western boats in very clear ways. And I mean actually, literally, geometrically orthogonal at right angles. So a Western boat has a bow and a stern and is bilaterally symmetrical. An asymmetrical outrigger craft of the Pacific kind is symmetrical about its transverse midline. It's symmetrical end for end. You've got to take the sail rig from one end of the boat to the other, or somehow reverse it, and that's a problem that has been not well solved. Many people have tried different solutions. One of the solutions is to put that point on a track that you can drag from one end of the boat to the other. That was tried years ago. People didn't really take that up. Another solution is to use a traditional, what we call a Bermudan rig with a mainsail and a jib, where the mast is in the centre of the boat, and when you tack, you drop the forward jib. You swing the boom 180 degrees and you launch a jib on the new bow.
Right.
That's the way that most Western proas sail. But one of the tasks I set myself was, can I come up with a shunting sail rig that is as easy to shunt as a Western tacking rig is easy to tack? And I think I've come up with that solution, and I think it will be balanced, or I think I've designed in mechanisms that will allow for that balance, but a lot of this is guesswork.
You've innovated a kind of variation on the Proa sail plan, or you've changed how.
No, as far as I know,
Okay.
this sail plan has never existed on the
Right.
planet.
So exactly.
Not
You-
only is it it's not a
You
Proa
created
sail
a whole
plan.
new sail plan.
I've invented a new sail plan specifically for the task of easy shunting. Because ocean sailing is very different from coastal sailing.
The wind isn't flowing around the
Right,
shore.
and you're not having to kind of navigate inside harbours or things.
Yeah.
So, and of course, these boats didn't have to navigate inside harbours because they were on the beach and they just sail out across the
Hit the
estuary
beach
and
and then turn it around and then leave the beach.
you're off across the ocean. But there are issues with sail balance, right? And the management of the centre of lateral resistance, that is the point around which the whole boat turns, is a really important thing in sailing. Because you and I both know, if you've got an unbalanced rig and you're heaving on the tiller to counteract the lee helm or the windward helm, you're breaking the boat, you're putting stress on the boat.
I mean, it bears pointing out that one of the main materials in your craft is plywood.
Right.
The original artist design material.
Plywood is an extraordinarily high-tech product, but it grows on trees.
And it was meant to save trees. I mean, it was designed to be efficient. It's
Right,
not,
right. And
so-
it is stronger than steel by weight. The advantages of building a boat out of plywood are extraordinary because when you curve plywood, it simply adopts a hydrodynamic curve. It just gives it to you for free. But to get back to orthogonal, I know it's going to break. It's going to break in 100 different ways. It's just a question of which thing breaks first. And it's like things will break and things will not work. So, will it float? Yes. Will it steer? Are the rudders big enough? Are they in the right position? Don't know.
Well, it'll steer to a point. But there's going to be a kind of envelope of conditions.
Yeah, exactly.
In which it will steer.
Exactly. Will it float? Will it steer? To some degree. Will the shunting sail rig be shuntable? Yes. Will the shunting sail rig be an efficient sail rig for sailing at different points of sailing? To some degree. Closer to the wind? Don't know. Will the asymmetry of the two hulls create destructive forces in any kind of swell? It's one thing to see, here's the thin hull, here's the fat hull, and you're going over swells like this. Flat water, it makes perfect sense. Like this, yeah, that could be stressful in this way. Now, with the swell coming at 45 degrees, you've got this happening. It's like you're tearing the freaking thing apart, and so, yeah, something's going to break at some point.
The oceans are cesspools. From space, the perimeters of the continents are defined by the bioluminescence of breaking waves.
The critical threshold is to have the other planet no longer dependent on the original planet.
Holly, now out of sight in the Pacific Ocean, represents a transition rather than a victory. It is unseen, like the future. The applause for the end of oil extraction off the California coast was a short-lived celebration. The platform is gone. Yet now, so too is the horizon. The symbol of hope has moved on to other celestial bodies.
This is not a submarine. It's a very unique tool for ocean research called FLIP. She measures a very long 355 feet in length and must be towed to sea. The water is used as ballast, and FLIP is partially sunk to become a stable vertical platform. This unusual feat gives scientists a real chance to finally work free from wave motions and sea sickness. It takes about 20 minutes and 600 tons of water to FLIP. She swallows water like a thirsty whale and suddenly takes on all the appearances of a sinking ship. About this time, the new sailors aboard wish they were somewhere else. After FLIP is vertical, a cluster of specially mounted hydrophones serve as ears to unlock the secrets of underwater sound.
The seas around us represent one of our most valuable resources. Vigorously developed, this resource can be of great benefit to our nation and to all mankind.
Dockside activity before a sea trip is always hectic. Boxes of fragile electronics gear are carefully handled, checked out, and loaded aboard.
A group of scientists gathers at the La Jolla laboratory of the Institute of Geophysics, University of California. Their discussion concerns the results of a unique experiment. They have been studying the passage of waves across the Pacific.
Waves generated by severe storms in the Antarctic pass to either side of New Zealand and spread out in all directions across the Pacific. So we had a large area in which to choose locations for wave recording stations. The selection included a compromise among many factors. First of all, we preferred islands we could get to. Stations would have to lie on a great circle route so that we would all be measuring the same wave planes, and they should be about evenly spaced. At last, 6 locations were selected along a great circle route 10,000 miles long, stretching across the entire Pacific. To monitor the North Pacific, where there are no islands, the mobile island FLIP was stationed at 45 degrees north and 150 degrees west. Her name is not simply a nautical joke. The letters stand for Floating Instrument Platform.
extend his arm, his eye, and his brain far beneath the surface of the sea. The sonar ranges out for great distances from listening posts. Is this echo from a submarine? Or is it from an underwater mountain? A school of fish? Has a cold current or a layer of marine life deflected the beam to make the target, which actually lies here, appear to lie here?
Knowledge of the oceans is more than a matter of curiosity. Our very survival may hinge upon it. The seas offer a wealth of food for the people of the world. Mineral resources on land will ultimately reach their limits. We may be able to extract additional elements in the water, to predict, and perhaps someday to control changes in weather and climate is of the utmost importance to man everywhere.
Hola a todos, es un placer estar aquí con toda la comunidad at QI. Soy Ricardo Dominguez. I'm Ricardo Dominguez, and I had the pleasure, while being chair of the Department of Visual Arts, to see a lot of the backstage effort in the development of Embodied Pacific, the tenacity of filling out applications, going through reviews of the applications, finding the space. This is a work that is epic in scale, multi-distributed, and over a number of years in terms of its construction. I'm really extremely happy to see at least part one of this project get off the ground. Embodied Pacific is a Getty PST art project, or what used to be called the Pacific Standard Time. The core theme is art and science collide as a platform for exhibitions, workshops, and events across Southern California. And I am also proud as again, as a former chair and as a colleague, that this is one of two exhibitions of the Getty PST art platform and exhibitions that are happening here at UC San Diego. Before I move on about Embodied Pacific, the other event is at the Mandeville Art Gallery here at UCSD San Diego. I believe it opens this Saturday at 2 p.m., is presenting Helen and Newton Harrison California Work, a retrospective exhibition about the work of husband and wife team Helen Mayer and Newton Harrison, who were among the earliest and most notable ecological artists. Founding members of the Department of Visual Arts at UC San Diego, Helen and Newton were local San Diego artists for nearly 4 decades, where they developed their pioneering concepts of eco-art or ecological art. And that is curated by Tatiana Zizanenko, UCSD Department of Visual Arts PhD in art history. You can also see more of this large-scale endeavor at La Jolla Historical Society, just recently opened. California Center for the Arts in Escondido opens on the 21st. San Diego Public Library Gallery also on the 21st. So please look at that endeavor. Embodied Pacific is curated by Nan Renner of the Birch Aquarium and Professor Lisa Cartwright from the Department of Visual Arts here at UCSD. Also supported in partnership by the UCSD Department of Visual Arts, the Birch Aquarium at Scripps Institution of Oceanography, that is featuring projects by more than 30 artists working with researchers in laboratories, field sites, and archives in Southern California and across the Pacific Islands. Art and science, especially here at Gallery at QI and at QI, echoes a lot of the protocols that art and science bring together. That protocol is making our invisible worlds visible as atomic facts, as ancestral methods, and as coding the future under the sign of climate change. What art adds to the dialogue is also the question of the aesthetic, the concerns of the perceptions of feelings and the feelings of perception, as it is etymologically driven in terms of the term. This is foregrounded for me by my partner, Amy Sarah Carroll, who often brings this tissue of the aesthetic. Art is the process that makes the world not only visible, but deeply felt in our bodies. The Embodied Pacific calls out to all those embodied in the land, all those who are shore dwellers, to remember that we are oceanic beings as well, by navigating 3 embodying waves: immersive oceanography, indigenous design, and critical craft. We welcome you to the first part of this epic project entitled Embodied Pacific. I would also like to thank QI Gallery, Dr. Ramesh Rao, for continuing support of art and technology here. For the next particular gesture, I'd like to invite up here Dean Della Coletta. Are you here, Dean Della Coletta? Huh? Well, I welcome her in spirit. Dean Della Coletta is co-leading the new Chancellor's art initiative called Art Connect with Vice Chancellor of Student Affairs and Campus Life, Allison Sutherland. Arts Connect's goal is to navigate the development of UCSD as an arts destination space for San Diego, California, and beyond. So thank you, Dean Della Coletta, for being an important voice in that endeavor. Next, I'd like to bring up Professor Lisa Cartwright and Nan Renner. Welcome them, please.
Thanks, Ricardo. You want to talk first?
Hello, everyone. I'm Nan Renner from Birch Aquarium at Scripps Institution of Oceanography. I've had the honor of being co-PI, co-principal investigator with Lisa Cartwright, visual arts professor, as principal investigator, initiating this project 5 years ago as a research grant and then an implementation grant. I want to just express my gratitude for the invitation to bring me, my colleagues, our organization into collaboration, to be on this adventure together, to invite our colleagues at Scripps Oceanography to collaborate with artists from here and around the world. And I want to also call out my colleague Megan Dickerson, who is co-curator of the installation at Birch Aquarium at Scripps called Embodied Pacific, Ocean Unseen. Our exhibition will open to the public on Friday, October 4th. We're open 9 to 5. We invite you to come and explore that, to see how art expands our perception, how science expands our perception, and when they collide, our perceptions and our perspectives expand exponentially. So we invite you to sense and feel and move and explore with your bodies in those unique installations. Thank you.
Thanks, Nan. Yeah, it's just been an incredible pleasure to work with Nan at the Scripps Institution of Oceanography. Nan is a PhD in cognitive science, and everybody knows that here at Cognitive Science, it's all about interaction and embodied research. And so it's just been an amazing research experience for us to go through during the pandemic when we had to move out of the archive and out of the space of the aquarium into the field. And so Nan brought us into the field not only to do work in laboratories that were field-based, but also introduced our project to Stanley Rodriguez, Dr. Stanley Rodriguez, and through that, this kind of developed into a number of different projects with Komiai partners in critical design and botany and other areas. So it's been a great experience. I have about 100 people to thank, and I'm not going to do it because we're really going to run out of time. And but I just want to thank Ricardo and the department, Jessica Greenlaw, Lucas Coffin. The staff of the Visual Arts Department has been phenomenal through this. Casey Polachek at the gallery has been incredible in making the Embodied Pacific 3 Lives show just look stunning. The first time the gallery's been painted in 20 years, I understand. Yay, Casey. So I want to just jump into some of the work that we're doing, but first I want to say, so some of you might be like, what's Getty PST art? The Getty PST was formerly branded as Getty Pacific Standard Time. And a number of the projects, as you can see here, 17 million in grants to over 45 California museums, galleries, et cetera. former projects from 2008 to 2018 focused on some of these topics that you see here, experiments in art technology, modern architecture in LA, and most famously, the LA project, which was the last one. And the current project is Art and Science Collide. They're all opening now. PST has become a permanent feature of the Getty Foundation and is going global. Some of these exhibitions will tour. And these are just a few of the many exhibitions that are up that Ricardo spoke of in his introduction. So Nan and I have been working on this since 2019, really 2020, in discussion with what amounted to 35 collaborators, with the idea that art and science intersections should be done over a long period of time through intensive collaboration, also with historians. And some of the projects worked out really great, and some kind of splintered off in different directions, but it was all pretty interesting. During the pandemic, we had a number of Zoom-based projects under the branding of ocean prototypes. So we had one around the Kumeyae Hakwayo. We hosted one out of the Kosai Kumeyae Market. We had one around Mosaic Ocean with historian of ocean media Melody Jew, artist Judith Hersko, and scientist Jules Jaffe, along with a number of other people. And then we did one on canoes, conservation, computation, and community that was really initiated by Simon Penny, who brought us into dialogue with Sakman Mario Borja, Mimi George, and the people surrounding the Tamako Canoe Revitalization Project in the Solomon Islands, which brought us into dialogue with Kyle McDonald, who, with Mimi George, anthropologist working with the people of Tamako, had a LACMA project going on around finding a mysterious light that navigators use to find their way in the ocean. So this is just some of the complexity that we were dealing with. We produced a book that's under contract with Bloomsbury for the Biotechne series called Embodied Pacific. It's just a big a kind of omnibus book reflecting some of the research projects written by the historians. And these are the exhibitions. And so these are the 5 exhibition sites that we have going. We're just going to speak mostly about the ones outside of Birch, because Birch has its own opening on October 4th. Yeah. So I'm going to jump right into some of the projects, beginning with 3 Lives. And this project was, for me, a very important one. There are 3 women oceanographers who were first in the field. Easter Ellen Cupp, first woman PhD in oceanography, Anita B. Smith Hall, and June Pattullo. Anita was the founder of the first marine biology program in a historically Black college, and June Pattullo was the first physical anthropologist. And it was interesting to find that there was nothing about any of these women in the history outside of a few items in the archives, and that Anita B. Smith Hall was denied the opportunity to defend her dissertation despite having written it. She was the first Black PhD oceanographer here, and Easter Ellen Cupp and June Pattullo were queer and lived with their partners openly during their research at Scripps, and did research with their partners. The projects that are up talk more about these 3 figures. So here's June Pattullo, who worked in marine oceanography with the support of Walter Munk. Anita Hall, who taught at Hampton University. Joe Riley, who did most of the work on Anita, is not here. This is a portrait by Amy Adler. Amy Adler did a triptych of portraits of these 3 women that really launched this project, going back not just into the history of portraiture, but how do you reproduce something when the data isn't there, when somebody has become a person of no renown, which is a very important topic of Amy's work, dealing with women of no renown. And how do you represent what is not represented, what happens between photography and drawing. And so the work of Easter Ellen Cupp, who was the first oceanographer to lose her job because she was a woman, she was not kept on at Scripps after her PhD, became the topic of numerous artists in the project. Here's some of Easter Ellen Cupp's drawing. Here are some of her drawings on marine plankton diatoms. This was the first rendering for what was going to be Crystal Ocean, but became a very dark vision that you see now, the kind of underwater vision that's in the Qualcomm Institute. Some of the pinprick drawings on the right, based on Easter Ellen Cupp's drawings by Judith Hersko. Some of the material we found in the archive, and in the center you see Judith Hersko's detail of a portrait of Dorothy Rosenberry, the life partner of Easter Ellen Cupp, from their home in Kensington, San Diego, where they moved after Easter Ellen Cupp was released from her job and became a science teacher for the rest of her life in a high school. Okay, this is a slide that really interested Jeffrey Stuker, who made a film called Drawn from Marine Plankton Diatoms of the West Coast of North America, and a digital flat case installation, which is at the library. The film is showing here in QI, based on Easter Ellen Cupp's Marine Plankton Diatoms of the West Coast of North America, a University of California book that was the primary atlas of diatoms for 100 years. Here is one of 3 statuettes by Nicolas G. Miller that interprets the 3 figures based on ZBrush renderings taken from photographs of the women that accurately reproduces their physique, their clothing. And the library installation, where you can see in the center a beautiful piece by Chanel Stone that really captures the absence of data and the missing figure of these women in history. So I'd like to ask this panel to come up, this group to come up first, just for a quick conversation about the 3 Lives Project. Those of you who are in the exhibition and willing to just say a few words about the work. So that would be Jeffrey, Amy, Chanel, Johnnie Chatman. These are going to be like quick lightning panels, very informal, just so that people can see the artists, maybe ask a couple of questions. Yeah?
Great, thank you.
Oh, yeah, you're fine. Oh, you need another chair. Do we have another chair? Casey. Casey's got a chair. And Stefania, did you want to? Stefania Therese Lindenau has done a lot of work on this project and will join the panel, join me here and ask some questions. Okay, so maybe we could start with Amy, because Amy, your work was really the inspiration for approaching these 3 women of no renown. So do you want to say something about your pastels?
Yeah, when Lisa approached me about this project, it was just so rich on so many levels. You know, it's hard to answer this in a really quick few sentences, but you know, it was really interesting piecing together the available photography and trying to kind of get a clear sense of who these women were. And it was only really when I started drawing them that I was completely startled by their personalities that emerged in the drawings. It happened with every single one of them, which doesn't always happen when I'm drawing people. So I just started drawing them, and they literally appeared and wanted to be, you know, articulated and rendered and present. And so when I see these images now all over the place, it's exciting, because I think that you know, they are you know, women that were, you know, invisible, and now they're highly visible, and it's through the medium of drawing, which is pretty interesting to me on a lot of levels, but I won't get into that right now. So yeah, I'm really appreciative to be a part of this. And the installation is really beautiful, and I appreciate being here very much. Thanks.
Chanel, I would love it if you could say something about the way that absence figures in your piece.
Yeah, it's actually nice to dovetail that after dovetail off of what Amy just said, because my piece does the complete opposite. It brings the element that is essential to all these women, which is water. So I made an abstract seascape of the San Diego Ocean to bring it into the space, to speak to what's lost beneath the surface. The picture is an ashen gray black. And because it's the abstraction, it kind of takes time to kind of understand what you're looking at. But it's essentially the shore breaking across the ocean and inverted vertically. So yeah, I was thinking about that, the water, and just literally how archives are lost. Yeah, the idea of just how astonishing that is, to be honest. And I wanted to bring that into the exhibition. But yeah, I think the exhibition does a great job with moving between figuration and abstraction as well.
Great. Johnnie, maybe you could speak about landscape and your choices to deal with landscape, these women's landscapes.
Can everybody hear me? Nope.
You want this one?
Is it on? Can you hear me?
Oh.
Okay. In the works that I was doing, I was really interested in the relationship that each of these women had with the San Diego coastline. Thinking about the physicality of their studies, thinking about the different ways, whether it was looking at the aerial views of waves, whether it was studying off of La Jolla shores and where the pier is down there, or thinking about more of the educational space. So I, over a couple of weeks, created a series of images using someone else as a sort of surrogate for these women, placing them into these different spaces so that they are then looking out onto these landscapes, thinking about what it means to really take in, appreciate, as well as to honor these spaces.
Stefania, you worked most closely with the Pattullo archive, and Jeffrey, you worked very closely with Easter Ellen Cupp's archive, as did Judith Hersko. And so Stefania, maybe you want to lead a discussion about the archive and bringing up the material from the archive directly and reworking with it.
Yeah, so the archives are just so wonderful, and I feel like you definitely get a sense of who these women were just through their materials. So I also have just a general question for everyone. For context, women weren't allowed to go onto research vessels alone until like the 70s. So even though their works are very physical and embodied, there's still kind of a dissection from the ocean. So can you speak about that kind of like absence and kind of disembodied from like material? Yeah. And that question's open to anyone. If you want to go.
Well, I do have this microphone, so I'll say something. Maybe it has to do with both the archive and our relationship to the body. My time was spent mostly with Cupp, and I know also Judith has worked significantly with Cupp's drawings, and the drawing practice of Easter Ellen Cupp is what really came to the floor and what was undeniable to me in the archive. Here we have a trove of hand-drawn scientific descriptions of marine diatoms, and before that, freshwater diatoms. And there's graphic languages that Cupp had to come up with in order to make what she firmly believed were scientifically accurate descriptions, the morphologies of these species. And the way that the line work and the continuous tonal shading and the different productions of value in her work were really exciting to me. So in some sense, whatever level of exclusion Cupp faced, somewhat ironically, produced this very much embodied, very much physical trace of her body, directly working with camera lucida attachment to the Lights microscope at Scripps. She was drawing the diatoms from life, and with rare exceptions was taking photographic plates of them and then sometimes even heavily modifying those with collage techniques. So the thing that came out for me is the residue of something like a practice of drawing, even something like a much older form of mimesis that's happening right at the center of the production of a scientific image. So it's Cupp and Cupp's body that are doing that are in some ways intervening in this otherwise photomechanical and technical space. I know I'm almost nervous to talk about it with Judith right here because she knows much more about this subject. For me, it was almost a palpable just example of how that presence of drawing can persist and have a different agency than perhaps what we usually think about it as cut off or opposite to the instrumental reason of a kind of positive science. Maybe I hand over to Judith.
And she was in a lot of pain when she couldn't pursue that. So when she lost her position and people kept writing to her and wanting more information about these organisms, which she knew so closely, it was very painful for her. And there are all these letters in the archives where she's answering scientists from Japan, from all over the world, who are seeking her out for that information. And she says, well, I no longer have a microscope or a lab to look at or to further my knowledge. So she would tell them what she already knew. She was also a pioneer of photography under the microscope, which was a sort of segue for me because I include her and everyone else I've researched in these performance lectures where I have an unknown explorer who actually goes to Antarctica disguised as a man on a research trip because women for sure couldn't go on these polar trips. Obviously, these boats were reserved for men, except for maybe whaling boats where the captains might have their wives or something. But scientist women couldn't go on those trips. So all my research has been centered around that absence and the histories of the few women who made it across the oceans, who actually did disguise as men. Easter Cupp, to just come back to her absence was, I don't even know if I know she was involved with the boats that they were getting. There was a schooner that they got. I think she actually got to go out a little bit, not on longer trips, but yeah, she was absolutely fascinating person.
Yeah, in the midst of that denial of formalizing the prohibition against women on ships, June Pattullo and her partner Beth Strong showed up, and they were in World War II Marine aerographers who were doing like bomb site photography, which became part of Walter Monk's research platform. So the two of them moved to Oregon and founded a program up at Corvallis. And June Pattullo developed early onset cognitive decline. Beth Strong picked up the work and was hired as a professor without the PhD to continue that work after Beth Strong's death at 51 years old. So this idea of carrying the work forward despite these prohibitions, despite these limitations, is very powerful. I wanted to thank Judith for really doing the foundational research here for all of us, and Jeffrey for digitizing the whole damn archive. Thank you. Jeffrey just came in and digitized everything. So you two have done a really important, groundbreaking work here. Stephanie has really dug through the archive and continues this work now as a PhD student with us. And so thank you to all of you for the different years in which you came into the project and carried forward these histories. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nicolas G. Miller can't be here. His statuettes are incredibly awesome. And on the basis of them, Lauryn Smith, an MFA alumnus from the program, has created patterns for clothing that will be sewn into clothing for June, Anita, and Easter at a workshop in November at the library. And we can't thank the UCSD Library enough for hosting the overflow of work that came out of the Three Lives Project. So thank you especially to Nikki Kolopelu and to Scott Paulson and all of the UCSD library staff for doing an exceptional job at creating 2 more exhibitions for us, one of which is the work of Claudine Arendt, who is also showing at the Birch Aquarium. Claudine is an artist from Amsterdam who produces large-scale public works and also works that deal with scientific data. And here we see her producing plaster blocks for what she calls the zooware molds. And these are works that are based on the data that's derived from the zoogliders. These are underwater autonomous vehicles that capture data from deep water zooplankton through non-invasive, low-power shadow photography and sonar, or as they brand it, Zonar. Claudine works with scientist Sven Gastauer and oceanographer at UCSD Mark Oman, and the Oman lab and the Zooglider lab here. So I invite up Claudine and Sven and Mark to talk about the Zooglider project a little bit. And Claudine, I'm going to let you MC yourselves.
Hello.
Okay. Well, this is Zooglider, how it's just being deployed.
So you guys can sit. I'll be the computer.
Okay, well then I can't see the screen. But okay, this what you are seeing is a Zooglider diving down on a mission. Zooglider is our underwater robot with which Mark and me are working quite a bit.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so this is a drawing of Zooglider, and front we have like what we call a shadowgraph camera that captures even like translucent animals in great depths, even where there's no light. And then just to mimic kind of loads of animals that live in the deep dark, we also use acoustics to sense the ocean. So in the back of Zooglider, we have 2 active acoustic elements emitting sound into the water. And so when sound is sent into the water, whenever it hits any organisms or anything in the water column that has a density that is different from the surrounding seawater, a part of the acoustic energy is sent back to the source. And then we can measure this echo, and using different frequencies, we can then kind of translate it into biological meaningful measures like species groups or biomass or length distributions.
And then there was the COVID pandemic. Sven came back to Amsterdam, and his office was in my bedroom, basically. So I passed his computer and saw these images, the shadowgraphs that Zooglider takes. And I was just absolutely stunned by how beautiful they are. They are like a snapshot from the bottom, of the ocean, of something we'll never see. So I have the hunch that those should be on plates of ceramics, so that you can sit on your couch and contemplate those beautiful gelatinous beings that are otherwise almost imperceptible. And since we were in lockdown in 2020, we had enough time, and I annoyed Sven to come up with collaborate on how to turn his acoustic algorithms into coffee cups. So really quick, Zooglider uses frequency from 200 to 1,000, and the rotation of the animal is important. So what you see on the bottom left is just a mapping in 2D, and I imagined what that would be in 3D, that you can, for each result of the algorithm, you can have a point, and that's a point cloud, and that's how you can shape a vessel, which you see the 3D image there, and this is the cup. yeah, this is just an explanation of how they're mapped. And then we, further down the line, we developed software so it would be easier to have a drop-down menu to be able to choose the species. And so there's some of the results of that initial project. And to me, it's about like people being able to like actually hold them in their hands and have like a really close encounter with the acoustic expression of those animals to close the gap. And so they are glazed on the inside and they're rough on the outside, so they feel like seashells. So it's like what the ocean can reveal to us, what you can find on the beach. So I just have some pretty pictures of the, yeah, and then this is, so the porcelain is, when was that then? 2021, 22, and we used the same method to make larger sculptures, which are, this is during setup at Birch. Yes. You mentioned that the sculptures are at the library. Oh yeah, good point. And I almost forgot. They are exhibited in the library at the Nest. No, not those. No, those are Birch. Those.
It's called Through Porcelain Cast.
Yeah, so it's the exhibition is Embodied Pacific Through a Porcelain Cast. So together with Sven and Mark and Clarissa, who curated it, in the Nest. Go and have a look. Yeah, that's the slideshow.
All right.
I don't know.
Do you want to say a few words, Mark, about the Zoglider and collaboration?
I'd actually like to say a few words about people and the role of people in science and when new things happen. So about 15 years ago, I approached my illustrious late colleague at Scripps, Russ Davis. He developed the instrument development group, which builds new instruments, but not just from an engineering perspective, but a science perspective. How can we understand the ocean in different ways if we adapt new technologies? Well, I approached Russ with the dream of taking his then gliders, which were designed originally just for the purpose of understanding ocean physics, and taking them into the realm of ocean plankton ecology. And Russ, to my great surprise and satisfaction, said yes. And that was the first quantum jump forward in this science. I'd say, and then there was an instrument development phase, lots of interesting engineering and tests between his lab and mine. We progressed with the imaging part of Zoglider, but we were stalled out a little bit on the acoustic side. We built the instruments, and then a postdoc applicant approached me, and that was Sven Gastauer. And there was another quantum jump where suddenly the acoustic information that we were acquiring, the active acoustics, Sven had clever original methods for integrating the optical imaging to better constrain the interpretation of the acoustic data. And we're sailing forward with lots of new things as a consequence of that initial collaboration. And then the next person who resulted in a big jump in how we moved forward was Claudine. And as she described, the happenstance, the serendipitous passing past Sven's computer, seeing some of these images, and these images from a world that were beyond her own personal experience up to that point. And I live in that world all the time, this arcane world of the freely drifting animals of the open sea. And for me, it was absolutely thrilling to see the way that she and Sven in combination could come up with new means of communicating these organisms to a much broader sector of the public. And so people are all important.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Claudine, Sven, and Mark. Yeah, Mark, it's been a real inspiration, coming to your lab and meeting Claudine and Sven through a box of dishes while being surrounded with all the technology of these incredible underwater autonomous vehicles. Okay, and you can see the connection to Easter Ellen Cupp, her diatoms, her interest in zooplankton, carried forward. I didn't bring the slide, but she created one of the first underwater apparatuses for imaging diatoms, imaging zooplankton. Okay, moving on to our next project, the We Show project. And if I can invite up the We Show group with Teddy Cruz, who has agreed to moderate this panel for us. Thank you, Teddy. Yeah, you can be there. Catherine, do you want to do the slides, or do you want me to flip through for you? And Gloria, would you like to come up? And is Martha not here yet? Should we wait for Martha and go ahead to another group? Okay, Teddy, we're gonna wait for Martha and go ahead to another group. You'll get a little preview of their project here. Are Lacey and Trish here? I think they may have left. Okay. We'll do that one last. Okay, we'll talk about the Seaways project next. It's a really big group. It began in two directions. The first was with Nan Renner's collaboration, Dr. Nan Renner and Dr. Stan Rodriguez coming together around the canoes, the Thule canoes that in 2021, there was a historic row out of 21 of these canoes that Stan Rodriguez had been reviving as a cultural practice with people in the Kumeyaay community, but also intercultural groups of people. And through Nan and others in the community, UCSD became involved through the program in environmental research, through Birch Aquarium. Many sectors of Scripps got involved, many sectors of UCSD visual arts got involved, and the broader community became involved. And Stan set the goal of having 50 canoes, which was reached this year. Is that correct? 2022, 50 canoes were reached. These canoes are made of reed that is called Thule, T-U-L-E, and Thule grows on the shores of Kumeyaay Lake, the waterways of Southern California. This is Kumeyaay Lake and Mission Trails, and you see Danny McCaskill in the front there. She's part of one of the other Embodied Pacific projects that has to do with kelp, that she is collaborating with Program in Environmental Research and Visual Arts PhD student Joe Riley and botanist and food scientist Audrey Snyder. Danny McCaskill is a kelp scientist. And here's the Thule reeds. Here is Stan and his son, Raymond Martinez, assembling a Thule boat. Takes about 2 hours to make with a group of people at Kumeyaay Community College. So the canoe as a platform of intercultural exchange, indigenous futures through science and craft conservation. These were some of the important thrusts of the project. And here you see Nan Renner and Stan Rodriguez in 2020 building a canoe. Collaborative work and community row outs. There's been one a year since 2022 at least, and more. Okay, Overwintering the Canoes, a photograph series by Jess Ashok, is in the SME gallery, and photogrammetry and LiDAR of canoes by Jess Ashok and Scott McAvoy, but most significantly, the digital work was done by Catherine Ong of Our Worlds, an indigenous immersive reality group, also led by Kilma Latin, Paula Tribe member, and here you see Catherine working both on the beach and with a green screen with Raymond Martinez, producing some of the media that became part of the Kumeyaay Holy Land project. So this is the work of Mario Borja, who is also here, who was introduced to me by Simon Penny through the Orthogonal Project, the film of which you saw at the beginning of our program tonight. And Mario is someone who works in engineering, and he's also a master woodworker who in 2011 worked with his Chamorro colleagues to build a full-scale Lower Marianas-style outrigger, the first to have been built on the U.S. mainland on the basis of, sorry, I'm skipping a little bit, on the basis of the drawing that you see on the left on the slide here. What year is it, Mario? This 1742, come on up. And Simon and the Seaways group, come on up. I'll let you tell the story of your projects. So Simon really brought together a group of people from the Solomon Islands, the Mariana Islands, and Nan brought in the Kumeyae Boat Project. And so the Seaways Project is really bringing together those 4 threads around boat making. Okay, so Mario, do you want to say a little bit about your work?
Our work embodies the Pacific as well. As a function of time, it started back in 1995 when a canoe came into San Diego, and it inspired us to ask the right questions of the connection between canoes to small islands. And that started our research, finding out that our ancestors built canoes, large canoes, but absent from our horizon. You see, several years ago, we were colonized, and seafaring culture took its toll. We were deprived of the knowledge and the skills of building a canoe. So I was 46 years old when I discovered that these facts, and then started my quest to build a canoe. When I asked my granduncle why the disappearance from the horizon, he said, well, one of 3 things, or all 3 things. He said perhaps our ancestors lost the cabeza, the head, the knowledge of building the canoe. Perhaps they lost the kanai, the hands, the skills of building a canoe. Or perhaps, sadly, it could be they lost the corazon, the heart, the passion to build the canoe. But in 1995, after discovering all those facts, we had the corazon, the passion to build the canoe. And several years later, after building little models to understand the mathematics, the science, the craftsmanship, and the tooling, we also built the confidence to build the canoe so that we could build our cabeza, knowledge of how the canoes were built, and our skills to build the canoe with. And in 2010, we started the project. 365 days later, the canoe had her lipstick on, and she was ready to rock and roll. And from there on was our journey. Now, building a canoe does not make you a sailor. It took us many mistakes and time to learn, and we're still learning how to be sailors. And we're here not to continue sailing, but to continue the education, because we do not want to let go 253 years for one to build a canoe. Because in 1995, our research took us back to 1742, where George Anson happened to be in the islands of the Marianas. He discovered a canoe and destroyed the canoe. But prior to that destruction by fire, his respect and admiration for the canoe that he discovered led to the drawing that you see behind me. That drawing was so complete with its front view, side view, and top view, along with a very valuable piece of data, the scaling, from which we were able to extract the dimensions of the canoe that George Anson witnessed back in 1742 and built the canoe. And today, as we look over our shoulders, I do not see any elders, and I realize that I am one of the elders now. And our job, our sacred duty, as I have adopted it, is to share the stories, share the journeys that I've gone through in the process of finding out who I am as canoe builder, as sailor and navigator, maybe perhaps. But my job now is to educate the next generation.
Mario, we're so indebted to you for the work that you did here. Mario led the 2023 Senior Master Class in Speculative Design on a series of canoe projects involving the repurposing of the Kendall Frost Marsh Reserve historic mural that was stripped off the 1970s trailer and replaced by a new building. Mario and the students went to the trailer, took the panels, went to the makerspace in the design lab with David Lesser, who we owe quite a lot to. And Mario was a constant presence in the design lab and still is in the makerspace, working with David and the students. And here you see them making ethnomathematical hands that Mario taught the class to do measurement through the hand, making 3D models. Mario worked very closely with the people doing 3D printing and building these canoes that are now on view at the Kendall Frost Marsh Reserve, led by a group that became the Sacman Chamorro group, led by Mario Borja and Sherry Miller Borja, Mario's niece, who works for Keyshot. She brought in a 3D modeling program for our students to do 3D modeling of the project. Whoops, lost my projection. Yeah, so thanks, Mario. We want to give Kyle a chance to talk a bit about the Tumaco films.
Yes, Kyle, one of the things that came up, I'm Clarissa, by the way, I co-curated the show with Lisa. And one of the things I was really thinking about looking at these shows was Indigenous ocean futures and how we might reimagine future ocean projections through sort of anti-colonial methods. So Kyle, I was wondering if you could give a little bit of an overview of your collaborative project and perhaps touch on this idea of Indigenous ocean futures.
Sure. So I'm an artist. My name's Kyle, and I'm a volunteer for Ho'ovaca Tumaco Association. And HVTA is the latest incarnation of a project that started about 30 years ago to document and share voyaging culture from Tumaco to the rest of the world, and especially across the Pacific. And so for this exhibition, HVTA created a new sail as a gift to the Kumeyaay people, and the sail is currently in transit from the very remote island of Tumaco. And in the exhibition, you can see some photography from Delcy Betty Bosi, who's part of HVTA. She's documenting the process of the sail creation. And if it's okay, I'd like to read like really short text from Betty that just describes that sail making process from her perspective. So she wrote, Tela, which is the sail, is significant for its major role in moving the vaca, the sailing canoe. It's the engine. Therefore, tela is treated respectfully by not stepping on or over it. To jump or lift your leg over it would belittle its significance. Men can, but not women. Women find joy in this role and weave with their heart because of this. That is women's major role in the vaca building. Apart from cooking and feeding workers on the vaca, women also help to make kaha, dried pandanus leaf, alongside men, and they train their children to make kaha and weave. Teaching the youth and the next generation is paramount to the survival of this knowledge. Therefore, the women weavers of Tumaco have been striving to pass on these skills to young women now and continue on to the next generation. The sustainability of this technology and culture depends on them. The laupaku, the pandanus leaves used in Tumaco, are from a different species than the ones Renalese women and other parts of Solomon Islands use. It is our goal to plant more varieties of the laupaku on Tumaco and to use it to make tela and other items. And this sail was made as a gift to the Kumeyaay Nation from members of Ho'ovaca Tumaco Association to renew transoceanic partnerships between voyaging peoples. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much. Catherine, I'd like to hear from you a little bit as well. One of the beautiful things about co-curating the space with Lisa and helping you install was learning about all the surprising things that came up in the medium of the volumetric film that you made of the Kumeyaay boats being built next to the physical boats. It's really beautiful. Please come and see it. But I was wondering if you could maybe give us a bit of a description of your work in SME and talk about some of these surprising things that emerged from your unique medium of filming and documenting the creation of these boats.
Of course, yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's really an honor to be part of this show. There's just so much work, and it's just so multidimensional. So really, our worlds, our piece is part of the project as Our Worlds, which is an education technology company founded by a Native American tribal leader. And the reason why that's important is because a lot of the explorations that we do sort of round back to two sort of guiding philosophies in what we do. So the first is, it has to do with, how the idea for the company came about. It happened at a tribal event where we were watching some elders, to recount some songs. And the idea of how do you preserve the experience of sitting in community with your elders from any community for future generations? There's just so much knowledge and charisma, and there's something that is perhaps not able to be captured by film or by text or by audio recordings. Maybe it's a combination of all of those things. So when we began sort of thinking in earnest how we could just turn this into something, a cultural project, interviewing tribal leaders, interviewing cultural leaders, we began to think about the technologies that could make something like this actually happen. So then our exploration into volumetric video and VR and XR, but then to think about VR, of course, it's getting better all the time. I'm sure you all saw the new Facebook glasses, the Meta glasses that came out. They look like Ray-Bans, and they're even better than the last Ray-Bans that they had, because now you can see an AR overlay, or soon you will be able to. Because the idea is you don't want to be tethered to these gigantic, expensive devices trapped inside your house. You want to be able to truly augment your reality with something meaningful. And so what does that actually look like? If you have our app, we can see there are... basically, if you allow it to, it'll parse your location against a tribal geofence, and you can see what indigenous territory you're on, and see an augmented reality overlay of the name of the lands. And the reason why we feel that's important is because there is a wealth of knowledge that primary source knowledge, oral tradition knowledge, how is that going to be passed down? So this is a really great way to kind of re-indigenize our spaces. And so that's one of the reasons why we think that there's so much promise in this medium. And then if you really sort of think about it, this our second guiding principle, if you look ahead to 50 years from now, what do you think education's going to look like? Have you ever thought about it? It seems like it is almost certain that some sort of immersive reality is going to play a part. It can be very empathetic, sort of like reliving someone else's news story, just sort of seeing the world through someone else's eyes. These are very motivating things, and yet there's this boom and bust cycle of the devices, right? Like there's all this hype around the new Meta Quest headset, and it's going to die down. The Apple Vision Pro came out, there's all this hype, and then it dies down. Why? Because they haven't found the right form factor yet, and there's nothing out there that really makes a compelling case for why you should do this. Like, why don't you just go outside, or why don't you just stay in? Like, where's the intersection of the knowledge in these places that's been promised? And we're trying to get there. But all that to say, along the way, I did go to art school way back when, and the idea of being able to make something, very quickly in my generation became hinged upon learning the technology to do it. So, not formally trained in this stuff, but then figured out the technology behind it. And it's been a fascinating process. So, a lot of the, holograms that you'll see, like if you go to the work that's in the SME right now, there is a, it's basically kind of a screen capture of a volumetric video that if you had the headset on, you could sort of feel the point clouds of Dr. Stan and Raymond and Hua building this canoe sort of wash over you. Like you're standing in the middle of it, and there's, we could shade it so that it's photographic, and then you're kind of like awkwardly kind of like occluding some of their video, but not others. But another way you could do it is just applying a shader so it's just dots or a mesh. And then it seems like that's a better intersection and a kind of like a connection to this idea of energy or, life in a way. And so that's the piece. That's it.
Catherine, can you mention the QR code that goes, because I think sometimes for people the narrative that this comes out of is not entirely clear. Oh. And you've made this wonderful documentary as well that's on the QR code. Is that right?
Yeah, right. So if you go to the SME gallery, there is a QR code.
It's the Visual Arts Gallery at the Structural and Materials Engineering building. Mm-hmm. And Clarissa will be in attendance often when it's open, but yeah. So you made a documentary that you can see through the QR code, but is not projecting, correct?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, so it does have some sort of overlay in terms of, how we did things, how we recorded things. Basically, you can do it any number of ways at this point, doing volumetric video. And so what that means is video, but then you're able to, once you've recorded it, walk around the video subject if you had the headset on. They essentially become kind of like a game object, sort of like in Unity or Unreal or something like that.
One of the really great intersections that we saw, that we were so excited to put you together with Simon, is Simon's work on interaction and computational objects. So Simon, maybe you could talk a little bit about the drone bot. And
well, thanks. Actually, I was wondering, there's a couple of footnotes that I was hoping to raise to stitch some of this stuff together, because I know many of you were sitting in the room when the interview footage was playing. I just wanted to say, to draw a loop back to UCSD and to cognitive science.
Yeah, great.
That I think about 20 years ago, I discovered Ed Hutchins' work on analysis of reports of Indigenous navigational practices, which appears as a chapter in his now famous book, Cognition in the Wild. And I read that, I guess, about 20 years ago. And the way that the wet, watery world is conceptualized within the indigenous navigational systems of Pacific Islanders is quite extraordinary. And what's fascinating about it is that it's utterly, as we might say, orthogonal to Western notions of cartography and navigation. The thing about oceanic navigation is that there are no landmarks. And in fact, in many oceanic navigational systems, most of them that I know of, the only fixed point on the planet is the subject on their boat and the dome of the stars. And in fact, the world and the islands are flowing. So there's a way in which the navigational conceptions of the Pacific Islanders are utterly incommensurable with a kind of terrestrial navigational idea. So I became very interested in this, and through trying to research this work, I met the person who should be here, who's very, very important. That's Mimi George.
She'll be here in November.
Mimi George is coming here in November, and I do encourage you all to meet her. I think Mimi is one of the most extraordinary human beings I've ever met. Mimi has tens of thousands of miles of blue water, solo blue water sailing under her belt, and has done ocean-related anthropological research from the Antarctic to the Arctic, and came to be connected with this community on Taumako that Kyle very fortunately has been able to visit. One of the most isolated places on the planet. And it's no accident that one of the most isolated places on the planet is one of the few places left that has a coherent indigenous seafaring, navigation, and boat building tradition.
That's continuous.
Like these traditions were once in every single Pacific community across the entire Pacific, and unfortunately, in most places, they have been eradicated by the influence of Western colonialism and related forces. There are one or two isolated communities that maintain the traditional knowledge. Some of them are in Micronesia, people of Lamatrek, Chuuk, and Palau, where there are living traditions. The people in Taumako have a different living tradition. There are some traditions dotted around New Britain which survive, but these traditions are teetering on eradication. And it is truly a set of what the UN would call intangible cultural heritage that I feel very committed to attempting to preserve. And so that's part of, I think, what we're all dedicated to.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you all for being here and talking more about your work. Seaways is up into December. Please come and see it. There are regular gallery hours posted, and I would be more than happy to give a tour to your class if you're teaching. And with that, I'll pass it over to Lisa for the next panel.
Thanks, everyone. So that's at the Visual Arts Gallery at the Structural and Materials Engineering Building. Our final panel is the We Show project. And so Teddy Cruz will be moderating. Ana Gloria Rodriguez, Gloria Crosthwaite, Catherine Eng, and Oscar Magallanes is joining the group as the collaborator with Gloria on the Mural Canoe project at Kendall Frost Marsh Reserve. Okay, so I'll turn it over to Teddy.
Oh, great. Oscar is here.
Yes,
Okay.
Oscar's here.
Yes. Well, yes.
So here we have
that's great.
Gloria and
I'm glad you
Oscar's
made
work.
it. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Lisa, for inviting to moderate this table, and it's been great. By the way, it's just what a beautiful project, and the collection of voices, at the intersection of art and science, cultural, historical memory, through embodied restorative, I would say, translational practices. It's been wonderful to be here in the afternoon. I just wanted to open up right away. I mean, I wish I could have dwelled deeper in each of your works, but I know that there have been some themes floating around that really resonate also, obviously, with your practices. Topics such as cultural history, place-based socio-ecological specificity, shaping Kumeyaay storytelling, indigenous storytelling, basket weaving, particularly in the context of this work and this exhibit, as a cultural and artistic practice. I would say, again, as a translational practice through symbolic, graphic, aesthetic systems, and the material specificity of Junkus, which has been of a particular sort of interest to me, and its relationship to local ecosystems and productive landscapes. I love this notion of Kumeyaay really not making this distinction or separation between people, community, and ecosystems. And obviously, something that has been also, that I've noticed through the work briefly, really, how to speak of restorative ecological processes as a way of entry into the survivability of language, of Kumeyaay language. And finally, Kosai, right? In the context of, I was really happy to understand it further, drying place, this place of memory in Old Town and so on. So there are many questions. I'm not as accurate as Lisa in asking the specific questions, but in the context of that broad set of critical issues, I just wanted to really open up, each of you saying something about your work, but what really might be a point of entry into a critical issue that really moves you, that really has moved this work that you're presenting in this exhibition. I don't know, maybe we can go, who wants to begin? Anna? From
There's another
Anna.
mic in the middle. You can share that mic as well.
Oh, this one? Can you guys? This one is
Yes,
good?
yes.
Yeah.
Handheld.
Okay. Well, au ka te pe shamis nya Ana Gloria o Marta ni shi nya hili ku pog na shi nya wa shamis pi. Ye ham pog na shi nya wa da matayum pi. Nya ka ku ma khai nya wa shamis hanta nyue. Hello everyone, good afternoon. My name is Ana Gloria, or AKA Marta Rodriguez. I'm very happy to be here with all you guys. Sorry we came late today, and then, but very it's an honor to be, again in this place. We came before, and thank you for the invite to come and share about our Kumeyaay culture. So I will pass.
Anna, before you escape, just to open up a bit, just maybe a comment about what moves your practice or your work. What is a major inspiration that really has enabled your work, in particular for this exhibit, and maybe a Kosai, maybe speaking.
Yeah, Kosai or Tepewa,
Yeah.
or your work as the representative of the Kumeyaay Nation to Mexico.
Yes.
Or with the ACLU, so many directions
Yeah.
to pursue.
So you guys can see me in different places for different things, but I mean, it's everything connected, right? So it's like we cannot separate our culture with our language, or like our history with our present and stuff like that. So I'm pulling different ways, but one of the main things working right now, having my own, I was how do I say, founder. I'm the founder and CEO of Tipehua Native Warriors. It's a nonprofit organization, and also I'm the board member of the ACLU for San Diego and Imperial County, also the national advisor for the Kumeyaay Nation to the government in Mexico, and also advisor for the Climate Science Alliance. And then, so we deal with a lot of the climate change and indigenous rights. I mean, you can, you can name it, different things, but I'm very happy to be able to do this kind of work. Why? Because we are like working to preserve our language, our culture. Also, my mom, she was a traditional chief in our reservation, so she always have she was very active in our community. She have a woman's garden to feed the whole community. Also, she was a singer and keeper of the culture, so she was teaching other kids. So she was one of the first women to get off of the reservation, like just speak Spanish, because a lot of the elders would not speak Spanish or just Kumeyaay. So my mom was one of the first ladies who started learning Spanish, and then that's why the elders, give that position to be the traditional chief, because she knows the culture, but also she can communicate, with outside. And then, so that, I guess that, like following my mom's steps, I was like very active in both sides of the border with different issues. And then, and COSAI came to the list too, because a lot of the people in the communities, the income is the art. So I remember when I was little, my mom would buy like little ugly baskets from the kids, and I was like, why are you buying those little ugly baskets? Buy the beautiful ones. And my mom, she would tell me, like, because I want to empower the kids, and then now I can see that now, like, some of the best basket makers are those little kids, so I was like, okay, she know what she was doing. And then, so in a way, I was like, I was not into like, into the arts and selling and have a store and stuff like that. But every time I go to the reservation, people have things, art to sell. Like, oh, can you please, buy this so you can sell? So little by little, I have a lot of things. So I'm like, okay, we need to find a home for all this art. So that's why we apply for to have the concession in Old Town. And for us, it was not as a business, but mostly is to have the Kumeyaay presence in Old Town, because it's a Kumeyaay village, and there's a lot of descendants over there, but they are not have any rights, So that's why when we get the concession, I want to put like, Mishkalapa, that's my Kumeyaay name, by the way. I want to put Mishkalapa or something, but you know what? I was like, this belongs to the people, from this village. So I want to honor the people who was from COSAI village. That's why we put COSAI Kumeyaay Market. If you guys see the logo, you will see they have a little Kumeyaay house, and then they will have the Presidio Mountain in the back. And then COSAI means the dry place, because we have the San Diego River, and then you have the Pacific Ocean. So that was a dry place for our people to go and have their, so I make that design or the logo, so that you can see the diamonds over there. That's the diamonds from the rattlesnake, and you can see the Kumeyaay basket. They have a lot of like the rattlesnake design, because it's for protection. But I don't really like rattlesnakes. My respects, but I don't. So I want to put like a very abstract, design on it to represent, but I have to see it.
Wonderful.
So yeah.
Thank you, Marta. This is amazing. I mean, to think of a concession stand as a curatorial and political act, within that particular site of memory. Thank you. Gloria, again, general question. I mentioned some topics, but maybe to open up your work and a critical issue that really moves it.
We do it in Spanish.
Puedo, o sea que mencioné varios temas, pero tal vez una manera de entrar a tu trabajo, algo que te motiva, un tema crítico que abre tu trabajo. Y yo puedo traducirte si querés también.
Okay. Bueno, estoy muy agradecida por haber sido parte del proyecto.
I thank you for being part of this project.
Bueno, me gusta mucho y poder seguir mostrando lo que mi abuela nos enseñó, que es el hacer artesanía.
It's wonderful to be able to have the opportunity to translate and to continue the work and practices that my grandmother really transferred to me.
Y también en parte de la pintura y los dibujos
through drawing and painting.
Que es algo nuevo que a mí me gusta y que me dio oportunidad también la profesora de exponerlo en este proyecto.
And it was wonderful to have an opportunity to exhibit this work because I have found particular love in drawing and painting.
Yes. That's it.
Right. Catherine, you already mentioned a few just wonderful, actually, reflections on the role of critical pedagogy and translation. And but further, in terms of your work, maybe there is a topic you want to open up.
I think I already said plenty. I'll just yield my time to someone else. But just to quickly say that, really thanks to Lisa for this incredible vision of putting this work together, because on the one hand, you have the ocean-going traditions and the boat-making traditions and shelter-building traditions, and on the other hand, we have the baskets. And, from, I am an outsider looking in, one thing that comes to mind is just the continuity of, for example, music as a way to tie the, decades and centuries together. These traditions all have a focus of excellence. You want to aspire to make something perfect. It's going to sail, it's going to hold water, it's going to a basket that's going to last for years and years and be passed down. So there's this focus on this handiwork, which is, born of tradition. And that's been really amazing to learn about.
Wonderful.
So could you describe a little bit the installation at COSI that you did with Gloria?
Oh, yeah. So, really just the understanding, like an apprentice, the life cycle of how you would make a basket. So, from sort of accompanying, you must have thought we were crazy, just like accompanying you to go harvest the juncus and, also just seeing how you cut it and then seeing how you make the baskets and the tools that you use. There we are actually in, I think, it's somewhere in Mission Valley.
Behind the YMCA.
Oh.
In Mission Valley.
Yeah. I mean, it just, it was a beautiful place, actually. And then even, you saw the trolley sort of go past and it just sort of made it very sort of science fiction-like. But a beautiful place. And, there was some graffiti under the bridge, but then just this bloom of wildflowers. And then, of course, all this juncus and even deergrass, I think, right? Actually, is this deergrass or juncus that you're holding?
Oh, it's juncus.
It is juncus, yeah. Mm-hmm. So, and what we're looking at here is so this is going to be the piece, this is the piece at COSI. If you, come this weekend, you can see it. So we have a couple of holograms. And so it's a frame that holds a holographic image and video. And so it's just a recording of kind of a documentary in holographic form of the journey of learning about the baskets.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so just the reason why it looks like this is because when you convert the image, it's just like a, regular video. And then you, on the other side, you sort of create a depth map, and that's what makes it look 3D.
So this is a rendering of the juncus here.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah, so and if you look on it, there's a QR code that will be at the market also, and then you can sort of see this, sort of come to life in 3D, growing. It's like a slow motion capture of juncus growth.
So part of the project here was to bring together the traditional basket making and Gloria's practice as a painter, also moving into doing immersive digital work with Catherine in the store around weaving. And that led to a collaboration between Gloria and Oscar Magallanes of the 3B Collective to make a mural for Kendall Frost Reserve, where we also have the mural, the canoes that were made from murals by the Sacman Chamorro group, led by Mario Borja, made a year ago. So Oscar joined the project to work with Gloria on this mural that will go up sometime in October. The date has not yet been set, on the new Kendall Frost Reserve building that will address some of the tradition of Kumeyaay heritage on the land of the Kendall Frost Reserve and the Mission Bay, and that will address also some of the botany and the traditional weaving materials that grow on that land. So Oscar and Gloria, do you want to talk a little bit about the mural that's in planning?
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Lisa, again for having me. And yeah, just a little bit about myself. I'm part of a 3B collective. We've been primarily working in public art since 2016. That's the collective right there, with also some collective members from La Pistola in Oaxaca, who also do public work and a lot of political work, things that have to do with wheat pasting and protest, and also with native rights in Oaxaca, along with a mural that we did in Cal State Stanislaus, dealing with a lot of history of agriculture and the indigenous community as well. There's some of my work as well. I work a lot with cultural iconography. I'm a Chicano born and raised in San Gabriel Valley, very much in the tradition of kind of Loreto culture, Pachuco culture, and things of that sort. So a lot of that goes back into the work that I've done with the historical narratives of thinking about criminalized aesthetics and colonialism, and the way it's really worked with criminalizing a lot of people in the community. From the beginning, from everything that was non-Eurocentric or Western, was really much everything, the way of dress, everything from basket weaving, so many different things that were either commodified or criminalized. It was one or the other to serve pretty much a capitalistic purpose, colonialism. And a lot of that is being kind of addressed in these conversations. A lot of things that have to do with who holds the keys to these archives and who's able to have access to these things. And a lot of that then goes back to murals and pretty much the way that communities would communicate different forms of histories that were denied or marginalized. And a big part of that is murals in the community. Those served as demonic devices and kind of cultural pride markers, which now have been whitewashed due to gentrification and a lot of different things. And it was a reconnecting to a lot of things that have to do with Native Indigenous cultures. Both Mayan frescoes, that tradition all the way going up to, the big three from Mexico, and then recaptured by the Chicano movement as a point of cultural pride. But those are some of the things that we try to continue with the ratio of so many murals. So it's nice to be able to recreate some murals in a space that, no longer has them, in a new space. But also thinking about the use of space with the Kendall Frost Reserve and how it feels so small compared to the rest of the bay, and being able to see kind of SeaWorld across the bay and all of that. And being able to address some of these traditions and narratives, as we move forward.
Yeah, and we have Isabel Kay with us, the manager of the Kendall Frost Reserve, who met with Oscar and Gloria to organize this residency that will be a public opening of the projection of the mural, bringing Gloria together with the 3B collective, the LA-based collective, which Oscar is a member, to produce this mural. So this is Isabel Kay, who...
You want me to say anything?
Yeah, say something about the mural.
So the original mural that was commissioned by a neighbor of the marsh who fell in love with the wetlands once he moved there. He was a retired physicist and taught himself photography and recording, especially the Ridgway's rails, which is a iconic endangered species. And he commissioned a mural that was not a traditional cross-section of a wetland that scientists like myself expect to see. And it really opened up my eyes to the power of public art, because the whole community loved this mural. It had giant pickleweed and giant birds, but, you can,
go ahead.
Yeah, and fish flying through the air. I mean, it was just lovely. And people would come and want to be photographed with it. And then, well, for better or worse, we got funding to replace the building, which was actually a 1950s trailer, not even 1970s. And it was, luckily, the skin turned out to be very easily removed. It was turned into these, and the community was desperate to not lose that mural. And I hadn't realized that there was so much connection. So it's been really amazingly wonderful to be able to transform it and bring the mural back to the community. And I think they will be equally, joyful to have a new mural. And my hope is that it's also a vision and that feeling of the connection to the indigenous people and specifically, the community, but the Kumeyaay, but also the greater idea of to reconnect with the land through the indigenous people's eyes and their language. I tried to take Kumeyaay. I think I got a C because it's not easy and it's very different from how languages that I've studied, which are the European languages, are structured. And but I am really thrilled to be able to host their visit, and looking forward to the conversations and the future vision that this will give to the community moving forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Isabel. So at the Kendall Frost Reserve, you can see these canoes that were made out of the repurposed older mural. And on the right, you see Stephanie Torres Londono, who was one of the curators at Kendall Frost Reserve for the canoes. And on the left, you see Mega Sanjay, who was the other curator for the exhibition that Mario Borja led in the redesign of those murals into Lower Marianas style bent metal canoes, and which will now be replaced by the mural by Oscar Magallanes of the 3B Collective and Gloria Crossthwaite, whose work is on view at the Imperial Valley Museum. Is that right, Gloria? The Imperial Valley Museum shows Gloria's exceptional weaving. She is an award-winning weaver, renowned for her weaving, who's now moved into immersive reality creation with Catherine in Our Worlds and into mural creation with the 3B Collective. So thank you, Teddy, for hosting this panel. Thank you all. We hope you can make it to Kosai Kumeyaay Market on Friday, Saturdays, and Sundays, when you will see either Martha, Veronica, or Gloria Crossthwaite there hosting the exhibition there. And we hope you make it out to Kendall Frost Reserve to see the canoes and join us when Oscar and Gloria make the mural. Thank you, everyone. We have a reception outside. There's food and there's music. I want to thank Justin Twerk for DJing for us. There'll be some great music along with food. So enjoy.